everybody, welcome back to the Fashion Bunker. Dacob here. Today I will be doing a review of Sauvage Parfum by Christian Dior. I have purchased this in 2019 as it is the year of release of this fragrance, and I have been testing it out since late October. Now we are in late December, so 2 months of testing. Now what will happen in this review is a rundown on the elements, the ingredients in this perfume, longevity, projection, but also comparison to the eau de toilette as well as the eau de parfum. So we have all three concentrations, or at least the ones that were or are of importance to me. I did not go for the water version or whatever they want to call it in the aluminum can, because there is that concentration as well. These are the three that kind of matter to me in terms of testing them out. So now we've heard a lot about Sauvage Parfum. Now I don't usually tend to review mass released and mass appeal fragrances on the day they come out, as many people tend to do. I guess there's this rush of getting this particular type of perfume review out there as soon as possible so you could get as many views as possible. But you see, the problem with that is a lot of times what happens, the person reviewing a fragrance does not really give themselves the right amount of time to get to know a perfume before they review it. So there are a lot of those reviews that feel quite rushed, and because again you didn't have the chance to really delve into the fragrance long enough to understand the nuances, the facets of all its kind of little mysteries and crevices that it offers to you as you wear it. So I thought to myself, okay, a lot of people are talking about really bad longevity. Projection is kind of strange, strong in the beginning, then it's not really strong afterwards. It's a fragrance that stays really close to the skin. I have to say, for me, it changes throughout the course of its lifespan, depending on the day, the weather, the temperature, my mood. So many things contribute to this. So let's spray it on and see how this perfume, or in this case, the concentration is the parfum, develops on the skin. So when we first spray it, and here's the first comparison to the original release of the eau de toilette, and sorry for the fingerprints, these bottles are fingerprint magnets, by the way. The eau de toilette has a significant, and I think particularly that's what made it so famous. By the way, you could check out my Sauvage Eau de Toilette review in the card section up above, but also the link to it is in the description box underneath this video. I have reviewed this one a couple of years ago. So the signature opening note of Sauvage, and basically the element that we know Sauvage for, is the ambroxan, that is kind of so loved and hated by many. Really, that's kind of the most divisive part of this fragrance for everybody is that ambroxan, mostly. It's not here. The parfum has kind of like a wisp, a hint of it, but it doesn't really knock us off our shoes or off our feet when we first smell the parfum. What happens here, and I'm smelling it now, is a kind of like a blandified version of what we have in the opening notes and in the parfum, which in this case is the mandarin orange and the bergamot together with elemi. But the bergamot and mandarin orange are already faded out. Within the top notes, they're already very, very, very subtle. They don't burst. They're not effervescent. They're not something that could be compared to Chanel fragrances as defined as an aldehyde. And now we know that Demachi often says that he's not really into aldehydes. The entire Dior, Maison Dior now, they call it the Maison Dior fragrance range, which is their Privé line or the Ex Privé line, is not based on aldehydes. He says he doesn't use those, as opposed to Chanel is all about aldehydes, right? But so we're lacking in effervescence, but what we do have is something strange here. Another thing in the top notes is the LME, but the LME, in this case, mixed with what will become in the mid notes the sandalwood. So there is and sandalwood can have an incensey quality to it. It's sweet. Incense is usually smoky. Incense isn't sweet. But sandalwood can develop different facets to it. Now, we know that Demachi states that the sandalwood that they're using is a particular type of sandalwood that grows wild, and it has to fight and struggle to survive in its own natural habitat. Hence, it becomes a particular type of a rougher smell of sandalwood. Now, a lot of this is poetry. Some of it is also fact, but for my nose, for my nasal fact, I can tell you that this particular sandalwood is not as sweet. It does have a balmy nuance to it, which blended with the LME does create an idea of an incense, even though it's not at all incensey, but it creates an idea of a balsamic type of incense that caresses over the bergamot and the mandarin, and this creates a very, very soft opening. A very soft opening. By soft, I don't mean, and I know everybody rushes immediately to that. Is it strong enough? Is it powerful enough? Is the longevity good enough? Forget about all that. Like, we got to stop always talking about that in perfumery. There has to be also other ways of approaching scents and smells, and sometimes a certain type of subtlety is also fine. You just have to be psychologically ready for it. If you're expecting to have always to wear just bombs, then this is not the one for you. This one plays with subtlety. And that softer type of mandarin, bergamot, LME, sandalwood combination in the opening note, but as we said, sandalwood is in the mid notes, it doesn't matter, it still already tickles through into the opening notes, creates a very balmy mood. And it also creates a very dry, as you inhale the fragrance off of your skin, you sense the mandarin and the bergamot, but that sandalwood subdues it immediately, takes away the freshness of it, and creates a slight dry/sweet hintertone. So as you inhale it, the tip of your nose, you smell the freshness, but then as you kind of inhale deeper and the smell kind of starts collecting onto your palate, into the throat, and deeper, you sense out the sweetness of the sandalwood, which shyly kind of just trickles through. And that is very, very beautiful, I have to say, in the opening notes. However, we also do go deeper. And as listed in the base notes, we have vanilla, olibanum, and tonka bean. Now, there are more ingredients here, but as we know, Demachi really does not like to state almost any of the ingredients used. In fact, in the Maison Dior fragrances, he just goes on talking about the fact that the single isolation of ingredients should not be spoken about anyway. It's all about a poetry or a poetic mood, painting a vision of something, a vision of in particular, Ballade Sauvage. Now, I know Ballade Sauvage carries the Sauvage name within it. I also have Ballade Sauvage, but it has really nothing to do with Sauvage. Ballade Sauvage is fig-based, but he doesn't really mention the fig. Rather, he mentions somewhere Italian coast, I think, a story of the fig trees. It's just, it goes kind of into this poetry. Painting a landscape, hence this background, which is also a painted background. It's called the Ballet Russe. It's a print used by Vivienne Westwood. So this is not a Dior background. This is a Vivienne Westwood background. But Vivienne, being the rebel at heart as she is, I think it kind of matches the story that Demachi would like to portray behind Sauvage. Or Vivienne, being the Sauvage that she is, matches perfectly what the intentions are behind Sauvage, in particular the Parfum. Bear with me. I know I'm all over the place, but that's how I review perfumes. If you wear something for a longer period of time, it will automatically trigger connections in your mind, your memory patterns, to stories you've lived, to images that have inspired you or not, memories. It will trigger memories that you've had or not. But I also say perfume is always a key to unlock certain doors of memory patterns, also from past lives. That's why I think I think perfumes in general are incredible catalyzers also of deep parts of our soul. And so that's why they're also so important to me. And that's why I also give them a certain respect, because they can unlock those doors given the right moment in time and space when you use them. Now, having said that, my review of Sauvage is a tricky one of the eau de toilette, because I do mention that this is the douchebag that we love to hate, or that we hate to love. And again, you can figure out more about what I mean about that in the specific review of Sauvage eau de toilette. This one is less of a douchebag. This one, smelling it again, is a bit more tired. This one is the morning fragrance that boosts the energy. It's just all over the place, and it just intoxicates you. It occupies your whole space, your senses, everything, and you have to be very careful how you dose it. You should not overdose this one. You cannot overdose this one. I mean, if you do, it does tend to become very alcoholic on the skin if you just keep spraying on and spraying on. But if you go with it, and if you give it the not the attention that it needs, but rather the time that it needs, you will understand that it is about subtlety. And Demachi does paint, with Johnny Depp, this kind of the morning in the desert outside of LA. Then we have the eau de parfum, which is kind of early evening. And then we have the night for the parfum. So the night, a lot of people in today's very sexually driven society, we envision the night as the wild thing. It doesn't have to be. A night can bring peace. It can bring fear as well. It can bring, I don't know. To me personally, the night delivers peace. I am much more active creatively at night because I really feel the energy of the place I live in as being more calm. It's as if most of the people around me are asleep in the city or wherever you are, and you feel their peace. They're not like desperately running around doing stuff. You feel that there's more peace, and all of a sudden you get that energy that you feel kind of is drained out of you during the day, and you get to focus more, you get to be more productive. So Sauvage to me in that respect is a much more peaceful fragrance, but it's a much more focused fragrance as well. In the opening notes, that tonka bean in the bottom and the vanilla. Now I do like Demachi's vanilla, I have to say, although Guerlain does the best vanilla for me. Nobody comes as close. Demachi's vanilla is particularly interesting. However, here it's not dominant or prominent. It doesn't really take over center stage at a certain point. I think it's more used to tame even furthermore the entire fragrance and to kind of bring it into a direction where subtlety is key. However, when it dries down, this one tends to go a little bit stale on my skin. Smelling it again. It somewhere in the mid notes or in the middle span of its life on my skin, it does become very, very pleasant, almost powdery. And I think, I'm trying to figure out, I think again we have the sandalwood playing that. With the olibanum, I think, the olibanum and the sandalwood start playing a game. They start teasing each other. They start flirting in a very delicate way. Again, nothing sexual about this. The flirtation it's a shy approach. It's as if they met each other for the very first time and they're trying to get to know each other. Or like when two puppies kind of meet for the first time, they kind of sniff each other a little bit, try to figure out, okay, is this a match or is it not a match? And in the beginning of that getting to know each other, of the olibanum and the sandalwood, the game is good. There's that slight sweet powdery note to it, which I love. A lot of people have described it as being too feminine. Again, you know my stance on fragrances. I don't believe in genderifying them. Wear whatever suits your skin and your chemistry and your hormonal balance. And we all have different skins, different chemistries, different hormonal balances inside ourselves, different more oily, less oily skin. You know, oil is also a conductor of smells in a very specific way. Some people can smell the same perfume on their skin for hours. Other people can just like not smell it at all after 2 minutes on their skin. So you can't. Don't fall victim to marketing ploys of brands who just want to sell a certain product to you and they think they have it easier if they educate you as a customer to kind of fall for certain strategies. I mean, whatever. You want to fall for them, be my guest. But it's just not me. I make up my own mind always, and I don't like to let anybody else tell me what I should or should not wear, what I should or should not like, what I'm allowed to or not allowed to wear. I mean, no. And by wear, I do mean clothes and perfumes and everything else too. So when they get to know each other for the first time, Sandalwood and the Olibanum, there's a shy sweetness to it, which is really cool. But then as they get to know each other more, that's when that turns into something stale. They don't like each other that much, I have the feeling. After they get to know each other better, then they go their separate ways. And kind of the separation factor there is the tonka bean that kind of cuts in between them. And if you Google the tonka bean, it also has, it looks like a little dagger, like a little knife. It's like pointy in one point, and you could like literally use it to slit something open. And it's as if that tonka bean kind of visually just like cuts the bond between the two. And once it's cut, you feel there's a little bit of stale bitterness there, which I have to, admit, I'm also fine with, in particular on humid days. On very dry and cool days, it doesn't really work very well. Also doesn't really work on very hot days. This is a very interesting fragrance for the cold months because it's delicate, but that powdery note, which I personally really like, comes more to the forefront in colder days than it does in hot days. In hot days, that relationship between the sandalwood and the olibanum is destroyed much sooner. It lasts longer in cool days. It's as if like you're kind of freezing the relationship and you're preserving it a bit longer. You're prolonging the good effects before the bad effects kick in, that breakup. And that's something similar I've mentioned also in the Eau de Toilette. I said, it's that one-night stand type of fragrance where the next morning you wake up and you're feeling like, oh God, why did I do this? Did I really? The walk of shame. It doesn't happen as much here, but we still have certain regrets. Wearing it in certain moments, if the moment is wrong, we will have our regrets. How does it compare to the Eau de Parfum? The Eau de Parfum is an interesting sauvage beast of its own. And by the way, you could check out the review of the Eau de Parfum in the cart section up here, or you could follow the link in the description box underneath this video, because I have reviewed Eau de Parfum as well. Very fascinating fragrance. I've used this one a lot. Most of the three is actually the one I've used. Smelling it now. It really feels, now this one was released a year and a half approximately prior to the Parfum. So chronologically speaking, we would have to kind of put them like this. It's as if, Dior first released Eau de Toilette, huge success. Then they're like, let's step it up a notch and do the Eau de Parfum. That was a success. And then they went for the Parfum, moderate success. For perfumery in general, all three are a huge success. For Dior, however, the biggest success was the first launch. Now, the Eau de Parfum, and again, you could check out the review, but I could briefly say is, now that I have really lived with these for a while and tested them, is a very interesting unification of the two, of the Eau de Toilette and the Parfum, because it unites what could, it's like telling us what could potentially be. That's what the Eau de Parfum is all about. It's telling us we could go subtle, but it's also telling us we could go beast mode. It walks that fine line between the two, and it's really interesting, and I do not mind it at all. It's okay. It's wearable and usable. and it can be very pleasant, but, and this is really interesting, it sticks to the clothes like these two don't. And that can be a little bit annoying. I have worn this one a lot, but wearing it a lot means like on a daily basis, it sticks to the clothes. So even after you wash your t-shirt or your sweater, whatever, in the washing machine, you went through all the whole process with the detergent and everything, you still smell it on the clothes. After the clothes have been washed and dry, it's still there. But what remains on the clothes is that, again, we got less ambergris on there, or, well, they say not at all, but it's still there. Here. You smell it, and it's like a very chemical, metallic smell, which is huge in the eau de toilette. Less here. Here we almost don't have any of it, of that metallic aftertaste of Sauvage eau de toilette. In the eau de parfum, it's there on the clothes, and that's what I don't like. I don't like that part of the fragrance. It kind of lingers on garments when you're ready to move on and go somewhere else. It kind of still scratches at you and says, "No, I'm still here. I'm not done with you yet." And you're like, "Yeah, but I'm good. I'm good. Can we move on? Let it be." This one won't. So that's why I veered a bit less and less towards this one, and I kind of was more and more fascinated by the Parfum. However, and this is something that several other reviewers did say, knowing these two makes you reappreciate this one more. And in particular, in the opening notes, there's a plasticity to it. There's an artificiality to it that is very, very fascinating. I am also reviewing this at the end of 2019 because 2019 marks the year in which Sauvage Parfum was released, and it's the end of the trilogy, basically. Star Wars had their trilogy, Sauvage had its own trilogy, started a couple of years back and slowly has come to its highest concentration, which is the Parfum. And it's an end of an era, it's an end of a decade. The 20s will begin shortly. And I did state already for my eau de parfum review, we could love it or hate it. A lot of people love it. A lot of people do not like it at all, Sauvage. But we can't deny the fact that it is one of those defining moments in perfumery of this decade. Now, a lot of you have countered that once I've said it and have told me, yeah, but Bleu de Chanel was also a very defining moment for perfume history in the 10s. In a way, yeah, it had a big success, but to me, smell-wise, Blue, and this is one of those rare Chanel fragrances that I did not review, and I just don't want to even go there. I know that there's a lot of requests for it, people keep asking me to do it, but it's just nothing to me, Blue. So, and I know a lot of you are going to be like, how dare you? Well, I dare, because if I don't like something, I'm not going to lie to you about it just because the masses like it. If I don't like it, I don't like it. Done. I don't care what others think. Live and let live, my dears. That's how we roll here in the Fashion Bunker. But also what is fascinating to me to end a decade is the LME. We're going back to something totally random now. It's not random. It's actually very precise and specific. So let's take these two out of the equation for now and go back to the Parfum, because that's what we're reviewing here. The LME is in the opening notes, and it is an interesting ingredient. Let's read quickly what Google has to tell us about LME. It's an essential oil, and it's a tree native to the Philippines. It is an oleoresin, and the resin or gum and oil are used to make medicine. People take LME to treat stomach conditions and cough, and they also take it as a stimulant. Now we have something that could be classified as having medicinal properties listed in the top notes of the pure perfume. And this is that balmy, soothing or hint of soothing scent or note that the Parfum has. prominently. The other two, not as much. The Eau de Toilette has the LME in the mid notes. They're not, or it's not listed in the Eau de Parfum, but it's there as well if you want it, but not, as prominent. It just doesn't, it's not given, or it's not allowed a major role in the development of the fragrance, or in the story that the perfume is supposed to be telling us. Here it kind of goes center stage, especially in the opening notes, because it does tell us, okay, we're done with that morning eau de toilette craziness of just blasting it in your face and being all over the place, and we're in a space now where we could be more at peace. Sillage and projection. Now, this is a thing, I already mentioned before, but it doesn't. It can last long. On the clothes, not as much as the opulence of the eau de parfum, or even the eau de toilette, but the parfum does have a moderate sillage, projection, hence, and moderate longevity. I mean, actually, on me, it works longer. I would like it to work a little bit less long, because, as I said, in the dry down, I'm not really particularly fond too much of it, because there is a relationship issue going on there between the ingredients. They kind of have, they're going through a breakup on my skin. I don't want to witness that. That's TMI for me. But until it hits that dry down, I'm really happy with it, and I like the fact that it's a prolonged longevity. But as I said, it could be even shorter on me, especially the dry down. I don't need it particularly. But I am aware that a lot of people just feel that it has very poor longevity. On my skin, however, that's not the case. I know a lot of people have said that it's a more mature fragrance. It's like, okay, you're calming down now, you've grown up. Can be. But guess what? We are ending the decade, and a new decade is going to begin. 2020 will be, the 20s are on the horizon. And this, you could say, is more of a mature fragrance, but you could also say, on the totally opposite spectrum, that it is more of a beginning fragrance, a newborn. It is maybe not the end, but more rather so the beginning. It's kind of, what I smell out in the opening notes is a shy awakening, rather than this character that has had her or his wild mornings, days, and wild nights. There's more to it here. There is a concept of a beginning. There's some hope in the smell as well. Maybe this time around, the relationship with this character is not going to turn into a douchey relationship. It's not going to be a one-night stand. It's not going to be that person that takes, uses, and leaves. Kind of a little bit what this decade was all about. It was all about the me. It was a very difficult decade. At the end of the day, look at where we've come. I don't talk about politics on my channel a lot, but within a socio-political context of a particular decade, and why this particular perfume was so successful. I mean, there are reasons for this. It did, whether we like it or not, Sauvage in its entirety, with all of its iterations and all of its concentrations, or maybe in the future also with all of its flankers that are going to come out or not, it did strike a chord. It did hit the nerve of the times. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been as successful. Yes, of course, Dior also invested many, many millions to promote it. But you could invest as much as you want. If something doesn't strike a chord, it just doesn't. Look at Chanel, for example. I mean, it was over a decade that they didn't release a new perfume. I'm not talking about flankers, but a brand new perfume. And in the tens, right, they released Gabrielle. Multi-million promotional budget, marketing budget. I don't want to say it flopped, but it did, because it didn't really strike a nerve. Nobody really cares for it. I mean, yeah, it does sell because people are brainwashed to buy because it's promoted like crazy, but it's not the defining perfume of that decade. Sauvage is, or was, now that this decade is ending. Whether we like it or not, it did leave its mark in perfume history completely. So, might as well get over it. You know, you might like it or not like it, but you have to acknowledge the fact that there's something about it that did strike a chord. And I find, in this respect, Demachy very clever how he, or together with his creative team, or whoever for him, how they went about developing this story, this trilogy, this Dior Star Wars trilogy, if you may. Now, Disney's Star Wars trilogy, we could debate whether or not that was good or bad. It had its good moments. It had its really bad moments. Similar to this, it's as if this decade was all about the trilogies. It was about revivals. It was about bringing back stuff that we already knew from the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. It was about revamping things. It was about showcasing. It was about all these brands showcasing their new technologies, how they could step up their games, how they could make what we already know and what we already loved and make it even better and make it even more high tech. And this is also a defining moment of this decade in particular, which is really nauseating at a certain point. All we were getting was basically a lot of brand, and by brands I don't just mean perfumes, fashion, I also mean in film. Production houses, distributors, from Warner Brothers to Universal to all of them. You name it, they've done it. They've all done it. It was just about rehashing everything they've already done, making it better, playing it safe, basically. It was a decade of playing it safe. There was also a recession. There was also economical crisis. There was a lot of things that contributed to a lot of these brands playing into, okay, we got to play this safe. We got to make money out of this. We cannot risk too much. And so that's one of the big reasons why we received a lot of products that we've already seen in the 80s or the 70s or the 90s, and they were just brought back to us, packaged differently. We were told that they're better now, but they all played on stories that were developed in the past, stories that were successful, that were loved. And they were playing with our memory of the love of these certain products to sell us these new products. Sauvage is slightly different in that respect because it is a new fragrance. And that's why, to me, it stuck more than other perfumes in particular, defining perfumes of this decade, because it did dare in a way. I mean, in a very offensive way, if you may, because Eau de Toilette in the beginning was just like crazy. I mean, it's so aggressive and potent, but hate it or love it, at the end of the day, at least it screamed. At least it had something to say. So many things in this frickin' decade just had nothing to say. They were just packaged in expensive boxes, but were so boring and bland. And as douchey as this fragrance is, at least it dared something. Whether or not what it dared turned out to be terrible or not doesn't even matter, but it just dared. And for that, I'm grateful. Yes, it could have been a billion times better, but at least it was something. Here's hoping that the 20s are going to dare more. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you like this review. If you have, please do thumb it up and let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section down below. Until the next video, please consider subscribing to my channel here on YouTube and clicking on the notifications button so you get notified with every new video that pops up online for me. I'm also on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, superdacob, all spelled together. And I'm also on Patreon. Thank you so much to my patrons for having pledged and supporting the channel. By the way, this video on Patreon is also available, but in ad-free form. While on YouTube, of course, the ads kick in, because that's the way YouTube sustains us. Thank you guys so much for watching. Until next time, never forget to never give up on love. Love you all. See you soon. Take care. Bye.